So today we are bringing someone that I consider a friend, Dr. Pat Davidson, on. I've known Pat for probably, let me see, close to maybe a decade now, not even maybe, probably a little less. Pat's someone, not to toot my own horn, but there's very few people in the industry that I would look to for information, because there is a lot of, and I want to get into this today, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of people, I think, kind of who don't necessarily know what they're talking about, and I don't mean to sound arrogant there, but Pat I definitely put at the top of the pedestal of individuals. What I'd love to do today is just kind of dive into get some information on your background. You've got a teaching background. You were a professor. Can you kind of start early on and run through it a little bit for us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And Don, thank you very much for saying
I
that.
appreciate it.
It's truly an honor to hear that. And Zach, really a pleasure to meet you today. And I just want to say thank you both for having me over for this. This is really a huge opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Pleasure's ours.
Pleasure's ours, really. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a background that sounds really impressive, I guess, in terms of like having a PhD in exercise physiology and a master's of science in strength and conditioning. But I'm definitely somebody that really started off. I was a slow starter. You know what I mean? I really was kind of a late bloomer educationally. I was a jock in high school, like football and baseball, and I got through high school by like cheating my way through high school. I was kind of saying like I really, like in math class especially, I would always like steal the teacher's edition from the teacher's desk and like photocopy the whole thing in the library and then like memorize the exams. And like they were like, "Where's your work for this?" And I'm like, "Well, you can't really show what you did in your head. Sorry, this is just so easy." Like but I was completely unprepared for college when I got there. Like I was playing baseball my freshman year. I managed to fail out my first year and like have to like kind of tuck my tail between my legs and go home and like just like work in a grocery store, work doing really kind of lame jobs like driving a fish delivery truck and like just like have to kind of like be embarrassed about myself and like start all over again. And that really happened for me actually. Like I was like just partying a lot with like friends from back home, and one of my friend's brother was, and this was in the late 90s, so like mixed martial arts wasn't really a thing, but his brother was teaching jiu-jitsu and wrestling and boxing, and he actually just called it kung fu at that point in time. Like it didn't really have a name, but
I haven't heard that name
I was just
Nintendo
like
game.
like yeah, like it's so ridiculous now. Like, now you'd be some like fancy school or something like that, but it was like literally in his basement with like these badass dudes that lived where I grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. But I kind of was just like completely directionless, and I hooked up with this guy's brother who started training me. He it was like one of these situations where this guy was like, "Listen, I know that my brother's a total loser. I know that you're just drinking with him and partying like every night. I don't want you hanging around me, my family, and the guys that train with me. Like, how about in a month if you can show up at my house and you can do," like he said something ridiculous, like if you can do like 300 push-ups and 500 Hindu squats, I'll let you train with us after that. So like, I don't know if this guy read my psychology well or if, but anyways, it like
Bizarre.
It was kind of like, I was like, screw you, man. Like I'm going to show up and I'll be able to do this. Did
you do any like formal training before that, or were you just like an athlete?
Just an athlete looking for something to do.
But never like spent time in the weight room, never did any type of programming?
I started like lifting when I was 14. Like, again, like baseball was my primary sport, and that would have been mid 90s. So that would have been like, like the Bash Brothers, Bo Jackson. Yeah. At that time,
McGuire, those guys.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like Juan Gonzalez, like the Texas Rangers, like you just started getting dudes that were yoked, that were winning the MVP. So like my brain puts together, like also at that time, you remember on ESPN, they used to have like the bodybuilding shows and the aerobic shows on after Sports Center. It's like body shaping and like the Sean Ray pump hour, whatever the hell they called it.
He was in here the other day.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like, but yeah, so I mean, I would like watch like all these dudes crushing bombs, and then right after that, see these workout shows with people that are yoked, and like I put together like if I want to be the best baseball player I can be, I have to lift. Yeah, like I probably made myself a hell of a lot worse. I definitely got slower and probably lost velocity on being able to throw the ball, but I was still like good enough. Like that wasn't what got me out of baseball. Like it was definitely much more like inability to not be hammered every single night in college. Like that was much more the problem. But you know, like I said, like I went home, I got humbled. I really like I was working like landscape construction, fish delivery, grocery store stuff. Like I realized I didn't want to do this stuff forever. I went back and started a community college. I ended up getting a associate's in history, and then I went on and got a bachelor's degree in history. I originally thought I was going to be like maybe like a high school history teacher and like coach football or baseball or something like that. Like, because those were like the guys that I grew up with in my high school that I really identified with and liked. Just they always happened to be like the history teachers that also coach sports. I don't know why that was a thing.
Kind of a bizarre 180.
Yeah.
History teacher to now doing what you're doing now. So
Yeah.
Totally.
awesome.
But
Actually, fish truck driver to what he's doing now is even
that
bigger.
was the
Like
worst.
Yeah.
Like I was the guy that put the bands on the lobster claws.
Oh,
So you know, it's like at like 5 a.m. like.
You're like getting bit. You're like,
Dude, for sure, like, you know, like you're reaching in this bucket and you've got one. It's never the one that you're going for. It's always like his buddy next to him. It's like latches on. You're like, oh, like rocketing a lobster across a room at like 70 with a backhand. It's like dead on the wall. You're like, man, I'm gonna have to pay like $4 for that lobster. Not if I throw him out in the woods, but you know.
and you work with like a bunch of guys with like 8 fingers and like 6 fingers, like having them chopped off by lobsters.
nasty.
Oh.
It was
my
like
God.
me and like 2 other guys that I trained mixed martial arts with that like worked with this fish place. So we were always like wrestling and fighting each other in the freezer too, which never like I was the smallest dude. Like it never worked out well for me. I just like get pinned in the corner and like have people like twisting my ear. I'm like, I already got cauliflower ear. I don't need more of this. But that like
Just
I
so
mean,
bizarre.
Crazy
It's
break
like,
room, yeah.
yeah, it was a bad. Like
So
our
funny.
boss actually was trained with us too, so there were some days where, and this guy had a fiery personality. He was this Greek guy. He would scream at you like. So I remember being like, screw this. Like I actually was able to punch my boss in the face at the end of the day after getting yelled at. It was the only time that I'll probably ever be able to do that. But and you know, like. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I started going back history, you know, eventually like when I graduated history, like maybe it's fortunate in some ways, there was a hiring freeze in Massachusetts at that time. It was like a, you know, big economic problem in like the early 2000s, but there were no teaching jobs literally for anybody coming out. So, you know, again, like I was kind of just like, I don't know what's next. And my mixed martial arts coach was like, listen, man, like you train like a lunatic. I don't know anybody else that likes to work out as much as you do. Why don't you maybe get a job doing something in fitness? And like, it was just one of those like, yeah, actually, that's a pretty good idea.
yeah,
It's
nice
probably-
idea. That could be fun. Yeah,
yeah.
I could work out for a living type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
So, you know, I went and looked at the requirements at the school that I got my bachelor's in history from, which was Bridgewater State in Massachusetts, and they had an athletic training program there. And I was like, well, I have good enough grades to be able to automatically qualify for this. And my GRE score is good enough. So despite the fact that I had no background there, like the qualifications, oddly enough, there was like a loophole. Basically, I could just kind of be automatically accepted. I realized I didn't really like athletic training. I literally thought it meant kind of like what strength and conditioning is, that I would be working in the weight room with the athletes. No, it's like, you know, you're on the sideline, you're spraying the bottles of Gatorade into the football players' mouths, you tape their ankles, that sort of stuff. You know, ice and stim and that whole deal. But while I was there, like I met a professor who was starting a master's program in strength and conditioning. Like I met her in the weight room. I was like working out, like, and you know, she had like the funny shoes on and was doing Olympic lifts and like really looked like she knew what she was doing. And I just went up to her. I was like, hey, I don't know what you're doing, but it's obviously like highly advanced and professional, and you look like you know what you're doing. Like,
She started laughing. Was she like, yeah, yeah?
for sure. She's like, okay, like, who are you? I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I'm like this.
Is this
you
a
know.
line?
Yeah, like,
Is that your line?
I feel like for sure other people had done similar things. Because like, you know, when you just see someone that like clearly is like, they know what they're doing,
Yeah.
like in every possible way. And you're like, I've been a complete idiot up until this point in time. Like, definitely not doing what you're doing. But she's like, listen, like, my name's Ellen Robinson. I'm a professor here. Like, I'm starting a master's program in strength and conditioning. Like, I've seen you in the gym all the time. Like, what's your academic background? So I was telling her, and she's like, oh, okay, well, we're in the same department, basically. You can transfer into my master's program. And I was in kind of the inaugural class for that, which was pretty cool. There were 4 of us. The other guys have all done pretty awesome things. There's like head strength coach for Bryant University. Another guy's at one of the major high school strength coaches in Massachusetts. Another guy kind of split off and did like a landscape company, but I was the 4th guy, and we just had a great time. Like we trained with her, like she taught us Olympic style lifting, plyometrics, how to power lift, bodybuild. I mean, just everything, and also like all the academic pieces. It was everything that college should be, like literally it was the dream come true.
It was a lot of practical, it sounds like, also, right?
100%.
Which I feel like universities sometimes miss. You go off, you sit in a classroom, and you don't really get that experience that probably molded. That's probably what did it for you. I mean, that woman, Ellen, which I don't know if you still keep in touch with her or not, but it sounds like she's the one. If it wasn't for that, who knows?
Total break point. Yeah, like
that was it for you.
100%.
And did you end up bringing that style of teaching to the way you teach your students?
Yeah, that's absolutely, like, people ask me, like, you probably get similar questions like, what was your track? How do I become the next Don Saladino? And it's like, you can't be me. Like,
right.
Be you. Like, but my track started because I wanted to be Ellen Robinson. Honestly,
right.
Like, I was like, she had the most positive attitude. People flocked around her. She was a physical stud.
Right.
And like, I was like, I want to be her.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I asked her, like, where'd you get your PhD? She said Springfield College. At that point in time, I was starting to really get pretty good at academics. Like I said, high school was a joke for me. Like, I didn't know how to study. I didn't know any of those things. I don't think I had read a book until I was like 23 years old. Yeah. But once I got the knack for it and figured out the process, it was like, I'm good at it and I like it, and it's rewarding. So by that point in time, like, the ball was really rolling, and I just made up my mind. I'm going to go to this school. I'm going to get a PhD the same way that she did, and I'm going to try to become her. And that's what I did. But it was funny. Like, I remember getting to Springfield College for my my interview. It was the only school I applied to too. And the guy that ran that program, Dr. Pallone, like, total hard ass. You know what I mean? Like, legendary kind of guy. He was at the school for like 40 years. Intimidating dude, just has an aura about him, and really, like, has been scaring the hell out of undergrads for literally decades. And I'm in the office, and he's like, so why are you here? And I'm like, well, Ellen Robinson came here. And he's like, what? Like, what kind of an answer is that?
Yeah.
Like, and he's like, do you want to tour the campus? I'm like, no, not really. Like, this is where I want to go.
Yeah. Now, did he remember her?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah, he did for sure. But I think he was like away during some of the time where she was there too, or something like that. So it was unclear. But anyway, like, he was just like, this is the oddest interview I've ever had. Like, everybody wants to tour and ask me about, like, what I specialize in for research. You don't seem to want to know any of those things.
And you're like, sign me up, basically.
Yeah, like, he's like, all right, well, you're in because, like, again, like, your GPA and your GRE scores are good enough. I literally can't reject you. But, like, you don't make any sense to me.
Right.
And I was like, don't worry about it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I remember the last thing he said was, all right, well, don't forget to tie your boots tight and bring your lunch pail because you're going to go to work when you enter my program. And I was like, I can handle work.
Yeah, sure.
Don't worry about work.
Right.
So, I mean, once I got there, like, it was rigorous. It's a tough school. You know what I mean? Like, you got Cody over at your place, brilliant kid. Like, he was ended up being one of the kids I was a professor for by the time I got back there again. But
Cody's one of our strength coaches who's turning PT, who
over at Drive.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say in the 20 years I've been in the business, he's one of my favorite people I've ever worked with. Wow. I mean, I think he can be an absolute superstar if he wants it, and I mean, I'm sure you agree with me as well. I mean,
100%.
he's just- I
So
think
do
he's
you like him better than like Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds? So
different people.
oh, okay. Well, so you said
Different
best
people.
people you work with. That's all. I just
Best people I work with, meaning like.
oh, okay. All right.
Come
My
on,
fault.
come on, stop
My
trying to throw a
fault.
curveball. You always
Sorry.
try to do this with
Sorry,
know,
my
Cody.
fault.
Cody's A++.
You got the hammer, you got to
Cody's-
drop it.
He's an A++ person, but you've been very influential on him. I know that you're one of
Yeah.
the guys who kind of groomed and molded him for the direction that he's going off in now.
You know, it's like jumping ahead, but by the time I was a professor back at Springfield, you know, I had a plan for, like, I would kind of identify who is the creme de la creme of the class. And I would always try to set them up for an internship, send them out to Indiana to Bill Hartman and Mike Robertson's place in IFAST. And I had never met Bill or Mike in person at that time. And they were like, who's this guy funneling these grad students our way, or these undergrad students for internships? But I secretly was just trying to send these kids there so they could learn all their stuff and come back, and I'd be like, so what are they doing out there? Like, tell me, what kind of tricks is Bill Hartman up to? You know, like, but I knew, like, if I sent my best kids there, they would really explode. And it's worked. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, you got two of them.
Yeah.
You got O'Flaherty and you got Cody.
And Flaherty's another one, not to name drop my guys, but started as a coach. I was kind of like, you know, you're always like a little unsure in the beginning. You're kind
Diamond
of
in the rough.
Yeah. And then
why were you unsure about him specifically?
I think and I'll say this right to it. I mean, I'm saying it not here, but
Yeah.
I think in the beginning he was almost trying too hard. I think
Okay.
he did realize he had a lot to offer. I think socially he would come into a situation and he'd want to prove himself so quickly and so fast that it would almost come off a little like kind of relax. I mean, again, went to PT school, started working under Charlie Weingroff at Drive, and has literally exploded as a PT. I mean, I have people running up to me going, this is one of the best people I've ever worked with.
But is that something you deal with that commonly, like as a coach, and also like when you have students, somebody that's just really eager to learn but doesn't know how to maybe harness that energy?
You know when you see it, you've probably seen it way more than I have because you've taught them way more than I have, but you see it a lot when you're in seminars and there's 50 people in a room, 100 people in a room. Within the first 5 minutes, you can tell who the kids are that are just so anxious. They're not even really asking questions. They're just more making statements. And you're kind of like, listen, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but don't take away from the situation and don't be that guy.
Yep.
Because within a couple of seconds, I don't mean to sound mean, but you're turning around going, that's the guy this weekend.
Got it.
And like, I want to cover, what do you mean? No, that's the guy who's going to keep not even asking questions, passing statements, wasting time. I mean, it sounds terrible, but you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's the ones that are over the top. It's like they're either like sycophantic or they're frightening you with like this weird energy that they're putting off. And you can tell like they're not really there to learn. They're there to like try to promote themselves out of like some place of insecurity that is off-putting. And there's, you know, it's like that in every industry, but you know, you can spot the ones also that aren't that just are truly enthusiastic and care and want to learn. It's just, you have to let it filter through over time.
There's a level of confidence, and I'm finding too, as a coach gets more and more comfortable with who they are, they're the ones who can kind of sit back a little bit and just.
So when they find that voice, like to fit the confidence, like that's when they actually hit their stride.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's kind of what I think Kyle did that. I mean, he's done an exceptional job, and I can talk about it now because he's done it.
Yeah.
And I think he would honestly, you know, he'd be honest about it too.
Yep.
He's like, you know, he's done it, and you see even how he's walking into a place. He's confident. He listens. He absorbs information. He's not so quick to respond and react. And I think that's it's a special quality that not everyone can learn.
But that comes with maturity, though, too.
Unfortunately.
You've talked about that as well. Like your career, like you would have done things differently now when you were younger. And I'm sure, I definitely would have. I mean, I'm the same way as you. I cheated through high school. I didn't read anything. It's like, well, when I started to, it was the same type of epiphany. It was like, wow, like learning actually is kind of fun. Like those goofy sayings weren't bullshit. Like this is real. Like I like it, and it's something that, that's definitely something I would have. Revisit if I could. But
I was talking about it with somebody earlier this week, where I was like, you know, when I really think about it, like the first book I read as an adult was Stephen King's Salem's Lot, you know, and like it was literally because like somebody left it in my dorm room or something like that. Like something's really dumb.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it and being like, I kind of liked that book. Like this wasn't such a bad experience. like reading like these like moron sort of like hamster running too slow on the wheel kind of like epiphanies. But like just being like maybe reading books is like okay. And then I can remember like later on after I had like kind of got like because I remember going back and reading all the books from high school that I didn't read.
Yeah.
And like being like these are really good books. Like wow, this is. And then having this realization, what if I actually read the textbook for the class I'm taking? Like I bet I could do pretty well. Yeah, I mean, and then like kind of getting to the point where like got to the point where I like enjoyed reading textbooks and like putting together lectures.
But you weren't ready.
Like,
I mean, did you
mode.
ever think you were gonna? I mean, at 17 years old, for you to think that you'd be able to absorb information and material, because I hear you speak sometimes, and I'm one of those guys out in the crowd where I'm like, damn, I can't absorb information like Pat does. Like you'll absorb specific things, and I would always have assumed that you were a scholar since you were 8 years old, one of those kids that just absorbed it. It's just, but I think it's very, it should be a good feeling to a lot of people out there that when you find your thing, when you find your niche, it just clicks, man.
Yeah. And it may not happen right away, and that's okay. But you have a seminar in June coming up, don't you?
Yep. Yeah.
And so what is that seminar?
The seminars that I've been teaching have been called Rethinking the Big Patterns. And the first one's going to be in Boston at Pure Performance. It's going to be the weekend of June 8th and 9th. And I've got another one coming up in Philly a few weeks after that. And, trying to do like one a month after that in most of the big cities. And really, when I think about what that name means to me, is that generally speaking in fitness, like we kind of all do sort of the same stuff in some ways. Like I break training down into 12 big primary patterns that we actually move through when we train. Like I have locomotion, triple extension, aka kind of like jumping, throwing, which is usually involving a med ball, change of direction. After that, you get into kind of like hip dominant movements or hinging, knee dominant movements or squatting, horizontal pushing, which is mainly like bench pressing or push-ups, horizontal pulling, which is rowing, vertical pushing, which is like overhead pressing or incline pressing, vertical pulling, which is pull-ups or lat pull-downs, and then you've kind of got like core movements, which I break up into core exercises targeting the pelvic muscles and core exercises for the thoracic muscles. Like those are sort of the things you do in the gym, so to speak. It's just that to me, there's some different ways that we can do those drills that can be categorized very specifically. And that word categorization is one of the keystone parts of this seminar. Because to me, categorical thinkers in the world of fitness are effective coaches. Like people that can essentially create different buckets and know what's different from other things and what activities fit into those buckets. Otherwise, you kind of train the same thing over and over again. And you're missing on these big realms of fitness that are slightly separate from other realms. And like, you probably see this on a daily basis too. Like, we both work in gyms in New York City, and you see some trainers that just don't quite have what it takes, like in terms of their program design or what they're choosing to do with people. But it's almost like you're watching what they're doing, and you're like, there seems to be no rhyme or reason to what I'm seeing take place in front of me.
It looks like they're pulling stuff out of a hat.
Yeah.
Or it looks like because and I see it more when I travel or when I'm not at Drive, because we obviously have a system.
You got a little bit better of a bubble.
Hands down. But like when I'm traveling and I'm going in, or I'm away for a week and I'm coming in at the same time and I see that same coach and his client, and I'm out of nowhere, I'm like picking them apart. It's not even about form or technique. It's about, wow, they're missing out on these patterns, or wow, they haven't done any locomotion drills, or wow, like there's been no warm up, or wow, they're missing this, and you start becoming a critic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're sitting there like, oh, the guy's doing a push down, he should get his elbows in. No, I don't even really.
Yeah.
Who really gives a shit? Like I don't really. You're creating tension. It's an isolation movement. Like if you want to move or if you want to split your hands at the end, like
that's the minutia. But then there's like these big rocks.
Yes,
where you're like,
that they're not even touching.
Yeah,
they're not even touching. And to me, that's
so. I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Can you explain some of those big rocks that?
So you know, when I think about this stuff, I think about like there are the possibilities for somebody to be really good at something over here and really terrible at something over here. Like I've seen plenty of people that can like deadlift the house but can't run very fast in a sprint. Okay? So they're just different motor patterns. Like your ability to be good at this thing has very little, if nothing, to do with your ability to be good at this other thing. Or like somebody that's really jacked that can't throw very well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like somebody that can bench press 500 pounds, but you like watch them throw a football and you're like, what the hell was that? Like, dude, like, are you kidding me? Or like a buddy of mine who's a bodybuilder, somebody sent me a video of him trying to hit a golf ball the other day. And it literally like one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. So to me, like throwing and striking are kind of in the same pattern group. And it's like, if you don't train those things, well, it doesn't, like you can bench
you
till
lose
the
them.
cows
Yeah,
come
you
home.
lose them. Yeah,
It just has nothing to do with the other thing. You know, and even like competing in, like I competed in the sport of strongman, and there's some people that are like great at certain events and terrible at other events. Like there's guys that are unbelievable at pressing weight overhead, but then they're lousy in like the medleys where you have to carry things back and forth or like drag things. And it's like, they're just clearly different realms of fitness. They're just different categories that need to be addressed specifically because there's no connection necessarily or direct connection or carryover between the two things.
Well, I mean, it was funny. For years in the strength and conditioning world, I would always hear the line, keep the goal, and what are you training for? And I struggled because people would be like, what's your goal? What are you training for? And I'm like, I don't know. I want to be able to run fast and jump and throw and lift weight and do all this stuff. And they were like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, you're going to be diluting. Well, you like pick one thing and get great at it. And I'm like, no, and I never did. It's probably why I never became exceptional at one thing. But for me, it was very important to be able to be good at everything.
Yeah.
And when I started finding out as I'm in this 20-year, run of doing this professionally, is that unless you are a major league ball player or a professional golfer coming to me, where most of the time their only goal is not just golf, they're like, oh, what about this? And then you're like, come on, let's keep the goal. No one I've ever worked with comes in with something so specific that, or maybe 0.01% of the people come in, they're like, oh, I have to be able to go run 40 meters as fast as I can. And I'm like, oh shit, okay. I still may not be the best guy for you with this. Let me put you with someone else. But what's your opinion on that? Do you feel like, that's kind of how you train though, what I'm talking about, right?
You could not have set me up better in some ways for this. Like a big part of this seminar in some ways is actually looking at the evolutionary history of the human animal and kind of addressing who we are as a species. And to kind of cut through the long story and to get to the kind of the fun answer is we are truly kind of a jack of all trades and a master of none in terms of our ability to survive in the wild. It's almost like I would do very poorly in the wild. Like I have specialized in force production related training as competing in strongman. Like if you put a barbell on my back, I'll move pretty well. If I needed
but
to,
you move well. You're a big dude, and when I saw you sprint for the first time, I was like, shit. Like this guy can. You move pretty well. Don't sell yourself short.
But if I had to try to crouch down and try to drink water out of like something, or like as long as it involves extreme velocity or force production in a straight line, I'm pretty good.
Right.
You ask me to do some other stuff, and I'm a mess.
So
you know what I mean?
lateral movement, you're not great with?
As long as it's really high velocity,
right.
I'm okay. But in terms of being able to fold myself into positions, I would suffer if I had to spend a week out in like the Serengeti or something like that. Like first of all, I've got too much muscle mass on my frame. I'd be real hungry and real upset, and I'd probably be too heavy just walking around on bare feet. My feet would probably break down and get blisters if I stepped on anything. I wouldn't be able to reach the soles of my foot and get it off. I would be a hurting unit.
I'd just be mad. Like I'd get blisters or something. And just no sunscreen, like all that stuff.
For sure, but that's the kind of stuff I think about. Like what are we built for? We're built to survive. In kind of an open woodlands environment originally, but we're super adaptable animals. We've literally been the only creature that's capable of surviving in the extremes of the environments that we've inhabited on this planet. like elevation, freezing cold, extreme heat, deserts, rainforests, you name it, we can live there. And it's because of our adaptability and the ability for us to move with extreme amounts of variability. But as soon as you specialize in something, oftentimes you'll drop off the ability to have a plethora of capabilities. So that's oftentimes what's happened with certain people. You know, it's like once you specialize, you'll tend to kind of lose some of the elements of what might have been associated with like a wild human thriving in an outdoor environment.
Now, I don't want to get too off topic, but I did want to ask: are you somebody that likes to put yourself in those types of extreme conditions to test yourself, or someone that knows yourself and your body so well that you know it's not worth trying certain things because you don't even want to put yourself in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty soft at this point in life. Like, I don't
Sure.
really want to go camping. You know, like
Just
what
glamping
yeah, it's like, what do you do when your friends want to go camping? Get new friends.
Yeah.
I'm the same way, man. I'm sorry. I'm a prima donna with that stuff. Like, give me a nice hotel, nice air conditioning, room service, maybe.
Totally. Like, I recognize how soft I am. You know,
I'm
like
right
I
there
don't
with you.
have any desire to try to go David Goggins and like try to live in the wilderness and like battle extreme conditions and all that stuff. I recognize that I'm sort of weak and soft from that perspective, and I'm fine with it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm okay. Like, I don't really need to go there. Like, I like the physical exertion stuff that I do in a gym.
Right. And
You
that,
know?
well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. In a different way, though, like you're more than willing to put yourself to a test when it comes to moving weight or when it comes to
Yeah.
testing yourself physically. And I've seen Don do it too. So like I know, like, you know, he'll joke around, but I've seen when you guys turn it on, like
Yeah, yeah,
it's still there in certain
it
conditions.
gets serious.
Yeah, I need that outlet for sure. Like,
Yeah.
if I don't have that, I'd go out of my mind.
My training partner, Tone, of 15 years, said it to me. And he's a lot older than me. He's 58. He says it's part of our survival at this point. And listen, do I train too much sometimes? Am I throwing too much in there? The answer is probably yes. But mentally, it makes me feel so
Yeah.
good that
Yeah.
if you remove that from me, like I personally, like I could never do a 3-day-a-week program.
Right.
I would slip my
Yeah.
wrist. Like,
I
people
can't
are like,
do
"Oh,
it.
I'm doing this 3-day-a-week program. I'm getting so much stronger." And I'm like, "Yeah, I probably would also, but I'd literally slip my wrist. Like, I
Yeah.
just can't
I
do it. I
wouldn't know
love
what to
training
do.
too much. Like, it's part of my. When I go on vacation, I don't take off. I train. I'm drinking and doing other things.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
still, I still have
Still
to train
working in,
and
yeah,
still working
same
in.
way.
No, I drive my wife crazy with that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, like we went to Jamaica recently, and I'm like Googling like finding a gym in Jamaica, and she's like, I'm like dragging her there because she wants to spend time with me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go to this gym. Like, you can go there with me. She's like, we could go to the gym at home. I'm like, yeah, but there's a gym here too.
Yeah.
And like, if I don't keep with my program, like, I got to squat today.
Yeah.
I got
Like-
I got a really quick story. You're gonna appreciate this. I was down in Cabo with my wife. We're staying at this great resort. I walk into the gym. The gym was nice. They didn't have a squat rack. So I Google in Cabo San Lucas where there's a gym. I'm like, I walk into the gym. The treadmills were probably 40 years old. The squat racks, I mean, rust, disgusting. And my wife comes in and she's training and she looks at me and she goes, I just don't get it. Like, we have this beautiful gym back at the hotel. You're walking around barefooted. You're going to get a fungus on your foot. We're going to be in the hospital. Like, there's literally glass. It was one of the most disgusting places I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I was happy.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, sorry, it's how I'm built.
We can go back to vacation. No, I'm the same way. I found a similar place in Riviera Maya. Like,
Nice.
is same exact thing. The hotel gym is beautiful.
No
There's
tents.
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But yeah, the hotel gym is beautiful. There's like cucumber water and like moist towelettes. Like,
She's
and
smiling,
like,
happy, walking around the road.
I find this the most humid, horrible place on earth
Yeah.
because there were barbells.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this place is useless to
You're
me.
looking at the old plates too, the old iron plates. It's like
We
getting
need to
nostalgic.
like
Yeah.
revamp like resort gyms.
I
Like,
agree.
you know,
We just need to revamp a lot of the gyms. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of disappointing. They're getting a little too soft.
Yeah.
And I just don't like it. Like, when I go into, that's why I train at Bev's in Long Island. I walk
Yeah.
in there and it's gritty and you know how it is, but there's a good feeling there I get. And probably most of the planet doesn't understand that, but we do.
No, they don't, and I think it's funny you say that because
We'll be out of business.
Bev's does have when you walk in, it definitely has a feel and a scent of like a gym that I used to train in when I was younger, and it's like it brings me back there and I miss it, and it was a gym with no AC, the equipment was run down, and everything was it was junky, but I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved that place and spent so much time there, and yeah, it just brings you back.
I love it. So you went through how you lay out your thought process when it comes
Yeah.
to programming, which is so simple yet so brilliant at the same time, and so many people out there aren't looking at it that way. They're more
Yeah.
breaking it down. Like, oh, I have chess today, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not, you know.
Can I
what
ask
did you-
one quick question?
Yeah,
though?
please,
Just,
please.
just about the seminar.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
like,
please.
just how
Yeah,
long is it, and what does it cost? Just in case anybody's going to be
So-
in that area.
And we're
You
gonna
know,
plug it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, I know that the seminar, the end of my information in terms of like the logistics is usually just like,
So just
when
go
do I
to
have
the
to show
website,
up?
yeah.
And it's always 9 to 5,
Got it.
Saturday and Sunday.
Can you get us the information? So if you can get us the information of the seminar, then we'll
Yeah.
put it up on our social
Yeah,
sites.
I'll for sure do
Yeah,
that.
send it
Yeah,
over 'cause we'll
like,
promote it for you.
yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Might even look into
you know,
attending.
usually what I do is like I'll let the host handle a lot of the stuff in terms of like setting up an Eventbrite page or whatever
Yeah.
that is, because it's like I can't like manage like 7 of them at the same time
Right.
and deal with that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I
You
also
should-
let hosts kind of choose the price for the region that they're in
Yeah.
terms
Which
of
makes
country.
sense, yeah, because
You
it's
should go
like,
listen to him when he's at Hype, when he's
I would
speaking
love-
at his
yeah,
gym.
no,
like
that would be-
that's
Yeah,
that'd be
that's
sweet.
another
I'd
one.
love to.
That's
I'll
really,
call you.
I think, like I just did that today. Like we do that every Wednesday. We have the Power Hour there,
Yeah.
and we've got a Patreon account for people to be able to watch from an online vantage point.
Why don't we go up there on a Wednesday or something like that? You and I
That'd
can
be-
take a trip up there on a Wednesday. We can come listen.
Dude, that'd be
It's
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's
I would
awesome.
love that. That'd
That'd
be cool.
be-
Yeah, I've
that'd
been
be
watching
super
some
cool.
videos that you post on Instagram doing that, and I was curious as to A, how you decide what you want to talk about, and B, like if you get like what are some of the most common questions that you get, because I know a lot of people
Yeah.
are filtering through, and I'm sure that they want to pick your brain.
Sure. So I think I honestly like I just think of like what I want to talk about the morning of, and you know, usually like first of all, Instagram it's always a great place for me to pick topics from, because I just scroll through my feed and I see what aggravates me, and I go, oh, well, I've got to talk about this.
Yeah.
Like this is something that like, you know, I've seen this 6 times now, and it's driving me out of my mind, and I just want to like, you know, put a stake through this vampire's heart and make sure it never comes back. So I purposefully look at a lot of stuff that I know is going to drive me crazy, because it gives me fuel for what I know I'm going to talk about. And I've got a bunch of buddies that will constantly send me links to like the dumbest things in fitness. You know what I mean? Like if it involves like something that's useless, that's recruiting no muscle mass while standing on an unstable surface, they always manage to send me a link to that, and I'm like, oh, why do you do this? And they're like, because we know how crazy it makes you, and we just want to like aggravate you. I'm like, that's why you guys are my friends. Like, you get me, you really get me.
I love you guys.
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, that's
Yeah.
kind of how I pick it.
No,
Or,
for
like,
sure.
I'll just watch someone do something, or you know, like honestly, I get fueled by things that just drive me out of my mind. Like I'll watch like somebody that clearly has no idea what they're doing, and I'll hear them give an explanation to their client about what they're doing that makes like 0 sense on any level, and then it's like, oh, there's a good topic.
You're actually one of the first instructors I've heard ever say that, and it's brilliant. And I'm going to tell you why. What happens with teaching or presenting is you go up there year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and technically you're trying to put out the same message. I mean, Boyle talks to me about
Yep.
it all the time. He's like, not really talking about anything differently, but he dresses it differently, makes it look a little different. But he's he's still staying true to what he's trying to teach.
Stays on message.
He's staying on message. Now, he could very easily turn around and say, all right, man, this is not stimulating to me. And that's when I think instructors start losing people. Like, are you trying to teach the class, or are you trying to teach, or are you trying to stimulate yourself? Like, I'm giving another talk this year on social media. I would never have thought I was doing this 5-6 years ago. I'm like, social
Right.
media, why? Like, this is ridiculous. I'm a coach. I've taken pride in my craft, but for some reason, no one's really doing this, and they put me into this box, and I'm going with it. Now, every year, my talk is getting a little bit better, a little bit tighter. I'm giving a little bit more nuts and bolts, but I still have to give the basics. And when I'm laying that out on my PowerPoint, I'm like, but I talked about this already.
Yeah.
And then I got to stop and be like, wait a second. 5% of my room is going to consist of people who've actually heard me talk before,
Yep.
which means 95% of them have never heard me talk about this
Yeah.
stuff. So grow up, step back, and in a way, you're doing the same thing. You're basically saying, if you were going to turn around and address the class in a fashion that you wanted to address them, it'd probably go over 95% of their heads.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, this is something I used to tell students all the time. kids that were getting a master's degree in strength and conditioning. I was like, how many of you like to coach the squat? You know, you have to see their hands go up. I'm like, good, because that's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life.
Right.
Like, I hope you understand this, particularly if you're going into a collegiate setting. Because just by the time you've got the kids doing things the way that you want them to do it, guess what? You got a new group of freshmen coming in that know nothing.
Yeah.
And you have to start all over again. And, you know, it's the same thing. Like, you were asked, like, what kind of questions do I typically get for the education stuff? I'm sort of known for being kind of like this nerdy, like, mechanics person and, like, you know, solving the system of joints in the body and getting people to move as optimally as possible. So I get a lot of, like, highly specific questions in that sometimes. And that's kind of like, oftentimes I hear those questions and I'm like, I need to look up who's asking this question. And it's always the person that I guarantee you know exactly who they're going to look like. And it's like you need to focus on other stuff. Like, you have not done the basics yet.
Yeah.
You know, so I really am big on, like, if I'm going to be teaching movement, like, you know, this sagittal plane, like being able to move forward and backwards and control your body in terms of how much weight you're shifting forwards and back or up and down, that's where you start. And it's the boring stuff. But if you don't start there and you try to do all this fancy crap, you're going to screw everything up.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I always go back to, if you're going to be a strength and conditioning coach, you better love teaching the squat, because you're going to teach that for the rest of your life. If you're going to be an educator, you better learn to love to teach the basics, because you will be teaching the basics for the rest of your life.
But even the basics now aren't that basic.
They never have been.
Right, but like the things that you're being told, and I don't mean to say this about a lot of the
No,
magazine's viewers,
please do.
but
Go ahead.
there's just specific things that I've seen you teach a lot differently. The squat, for instance. Remember when me
Yeah.
and you, years ago, we went into a discussion on the squat, and you were teaching at Drive, and he sat there, and he was gracious with his time, and he started instructing the coaches. We were talking about the feet and what the feet were actually doing, and the knees, and you know, head up or packed, and you start getting into all these things, and you're like, holy shit, this is very easy for people.
Yep.
I mean, you're a professional, I'm a professional, you're a professional at this. I don't blame the Lehman for getting confused, because there's so much information out there. You could bring them on right now to talk about the squat and do a segment in your next magazine, and it'd probably be completely different than what anyone else is teaching.
And I would
and there'd be a reason why.
But I would love that.
But you should do that with him.
And
You should
I
do
would-
that with him. That's why I'm
and
bringing it up.
But I would love to do that, because I do love to get those ideas and those
It's
voices
challenging
out there.
it, but he'll put some science
Yeah,
behind it.
and
right.
but that's what I want, and I want people to understand that just because they learn something one way doesn't mean A, it's right, doesn't mean B, it's the only way to do it, and that there could be a better way for them, and there could be a different way that could be better for them.
Yeah.
Like, they should be open to learning and evolving and moving, and it doesn't necessarily mean just because you know one thing and it's working for you right now, it's going to work for you forever. Like, you've talked about, like, a lot of bodybuilders and a lot of people that are piling weight on it. Their body has adapted to that stress.
We were talking about Michael. We were talking about Michael Hearn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going. I don't want to
Yeah.
interrupt you.
No, but over. Like, but if you use his mechanics, if I use his mechanics in a lot of the moves, I'm not walking. I'm going to be hobbling away. Like, I can't do it.
Or if you took him out of his mechanics that he's been doing for
Yeah,
50 years,
he's
that
gonna be
type of move,
hobbling.
Is he going to be screwed up? You know,
Yeah.
if you went in and looked at him and go, Mike, no, I don't like what you're doing here. Is he going to instantaneously get hurt? I don't know.
And it's also like the dude's in his going to be 50 or in his 50s, and the
50,
guy
just
is like
turned 50.
still putting up some serious weight, and it's like he seems to be walking around just fine. So it's like, for somebody to be like, hey man, you're doing it wrong, it's kind of like, well, shit, if he's doing it wrong, like, what am I?
Yeah.
What am I
Yeah.
doing?
Some feedback on that.
Well, I got to tell you, you guys couldn't set me up for talking about this seminar any better. Okay, like, in the beginning of this seminar, I have these theoretical models that guide my thought process for everything that I do. And the first one that I put down is called just variability. Okay, and I always ask people, you know, what do rich people do to make sure that they, A, don't lose their money, and B, grow their money to the highest possible levels? And typically what they do is they try to diversify where their funds lie. You know what I mean? They don't put all their eggs in one basket. That's not the right approach to do with that. And when it comes to movement, we need to have options. You know, like, I make this comparison, and I really like this comparison. From the biggest of big picture of life on this planet, like these are the things that I think about. You know what I mean? I never thought I'd get to the point in my life where I think about these things. But life as an entity started one time on this planet, and it evolved and turned into everything that's alive on this planet that it currently exists. And nobody can agree on what the point of life is, but all physicists can agree on the fact that life has come up with a very specific strategy for how to not get wiped off of this Earth. Because this Earth is fairly inhospitable and has had moments and periods where it's become excruciatingly inhospitable and has wiped out many forms of life. So life, we can all agree upon, it is trying to hang on to this planet by, claws and whatever it can do to not get completely blown out of the water. And it's come up with this strategy of becoming highly variable in its presentations. If it were all very similar to itself, if life only had like one or two presentations and some catastrophic environmental factor happened, all life would cease to exist. If life had different starting points, it would be too chaotic to exist. It has a common backbone. It's a carbon base. There's a tie that sort of binds it all together and a common denominator that can all fall back to. But there's so many different presentations to it that we could say that life is incredibly variable and has a million contingency plans for survival if something goes wrong. And what's interesting to me is that each form of life as an individual takes this same strategy. It has to have options for how it deals with events that can take place during its life. And it has the ability to act in different ways. Like if you think about you as a person, like you're not going to talk to me the same way that you would talk to like your grandparents or to a police officer or to your buddies at the bar or to your wife or, a 5-year-old. Like you have different elements of you as a personality that are capable of expressing themselves at different times. And it's the same thing for movement. There is no best way. Like people have asked me, what's the best way to squat? Possessing different ways to squat is the best way to squat.
Right.
That's what it is. And what's interesting to me though is that I need to possess variability, which comes down to basically like, do you possess adequate range of motion at all your joints so that you fit into human norms? Like not significantly more or significantly less, but the right amount. That gives you options. But then have you actually practiced this thing and mastered the fundamentals of it? So like I like to use other sports because people can understand it easier. 5-year-olds have great variability. If I were to table test 5-year-olds, I'd see like, oh, they've got great straight leg raise and like shoulder flexion and internal rotation, blah, blah, blah. They've got plenty of joint motion. Have you ever seen a 5-year-old shoot a basketball well? No, it's like a train wreck. It's like underhand, it's a baseball throw, it's a hook shot, I guess, of some kind. They don't have the fundamentals. They haven't learned one consistent way to do it. They have to learn one consistent way to do it properly, and that's essential. And once they do that, they now have this sort of like constant memory of basketball shot in their head. And now if they've practiced this for an extensive amount of time, they're capable of kind of doing varieties of that shot under different circumstances. If they're being guarded tight, they can move in a different way and like fade away and shoot, or they could jab step and shoot. The example that everyone can relate to is because we're talking about motor programs, movement expressions. And I have people do this at seminars all the time. I say, hey, could you do me a favor and use your pen and on your paper and just sign your name for me? And people, okay, they go ahead and they sign their name. And I say, okay, do me a favor, put the pen down. Just sign your name in the air in front of you. Okay, good job. And then I say, hey, can you point your toe in front of you and sign your name? And now, can you stand up and can you sign your name with your zipper? And that's, my favorite one. I got a bunch of people kind of wiggling around. And I'm like, how many of you needed to practice that to be able to do it? Nobody did. They all actually used the same strokes and rhythms and sort of sequence to sign their name with any of the parts of their body that they wanted to. But imagine if I asked like a 5-year-old to do it. They don't have enough repetition of that task to do it yet. Right. You know what I mean? So you need the motion potential to be able to do something properly. And then you need to practice it to hone it. And then if you've done that and you possess those two things at the same time, variability from the perspective of having options, while at the same time having the fundamentals nailed down with one standardized, systematic way to accomplish a task, now under different circumstances that present themselves in the acute environment that you find yourself in, you can unfold and express this capability to fit it perfectly.
No, so we definitely understand the importance, and I'm hoping everyone listening to this is going to understand the importance of variability. But do you say, and I have my opinion on it, I want to hear yours. You know, a woman comes into the gym and they hear this talk and they're like, oh, I got to start varying things. I need more variability.
Yeah,
you know what
and
I'm
it is
talking about?
not what that means.
Exactly. So can you get into detail on that?
Yeah, for sure. It's almost like I use these lame statements all the time where I'm like, listen, it's not fun without the fundamentals, you know? And
You're the best, thanks.
like you don't need, like what people need is they need to learn how to squat one way over and over and over, doing it the same way, so that it's ingrained. It is a go-to pattern, the same as signing your name. Mm-hmm. Like when you were doing that, you had the sheet in front of you that showed you exactly the right shape to make for the letters that are in your name, and you practiced it over and over and over again to try to standardize the way that you do it. And eventually you get to the point where you kind of freestyle it and you have your own variation on it, and the way that you do it is uniquely your own. But we all kind of started from the same script, so to speak. And that's the same thing. Like, if you can do a perfect 2-foot squat with a barbell, I bet you can probably do a 2-foot squat with some other a kettlebell, the barbell in front of you on your shoulders, the barbell in the crooks of your elbows, dumbbells, you name it, you'll probably be able to do it. But the people that squat well are the people that learned one fundamental way to do it in the beginning. It's the old Bruce Lee quote of, like, I do not fear the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. That is the real deal, you know?
Because I feel like that's a big problem in our industry, is that you'll hear people going in and they're adding too much variability at the wrong time, and they're never actually getting better at anything.
Yep.
Because they're always, I mean, listen, unless you're a highly advanced lifter and you're doing maybe the conjugate method where you got to train the bench press and you're turning around, you're doing everything but the bench press to get the bench press stronger, that's fine. But a newbie coming in, like you said, basics, like, all right, well, bench, squat, deadlift, if you earn the right pull up, if you earn the right to do these movements and there's nothing structurally wrong, then get really good at those movements before you start diving into the toolbox of 5,000 other movements you could be doing, or these fluffy movements.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine the other day come on Instagram, and I was talking to this person, and this person said that they would put up all these exercises. I'm like, but you don't train that way. And they go, absolutely not. I don't train that way. Unfortunately, I got to put it up there because that's what, you know, what are you doing today, Donnie? I'm like, I'm back squatting, I'm doing Zerchers, I'm doing a full body pressing routine. Let's go. We did 5 movements, we did our warm up, and we were done, and that was it. But it's so funny, like, there's this illusion of what these people are doing to look like that.
Yeah.
And it's really not the case. You almost, like, 9 out of 10 times, you always see someone who is really good at something, and you see what they're putting up. It's almost never what they're putting up on the videos. You know?
So they're just trying to, like, it's just for flash.
They need an emotional grabber.
Yeah.
They have to have that thumbnail. That's like, all right, man, like, I have you have my interest. What's next?
What is it? Because practice isn't sexy. Like, getting really, really good at something is just not
putting up. I mean, there's only so many videos of the bench press or deadlift I can put up.
It's not the best visual exercise, maybe, like battle ropes and burpees, like at the same time, are more visually stunning. There's more going on, like just seeing the rope go through the air or something. Yeah, I mean, like, if you want to, like, have the most excruciatingly boring day of your life, go to a powerlifting meet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, another squat, and guess what's up next? Another squat.
Heavyweight?
Yeah. But
oh, like, this guy's leading off at 585. I'm like all excited. Yeah.
Don's like,
by the time you get there, but you have to go through all the people that are squatting like $123.
Yeah.
But it's you know, it's not the most visually appealing exercise for most people. You know, it doesn't have the flash.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's like, you know, I have clients that are like, what are we doing today? Let me guess, squatting. I'm Like, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what would you have me replace it with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want me to put in its place?
I know.
Like, we're training, legs today.
And it's a bummer also because success isn't always quantified with like what's a good outcome for a lot of individuals. Like I feel like in our industry, it's patience. He hasn't gotten his body to where he's gotten it to from 1 year of hard work. He's done that through 25, 30 years of hard work.
Right.
And the amount of time, and he's still learning and he's still challenging himself as I am. But this is a long process. And anytime I meet someone and they're like, well, how long is this going to take me? I'm like,
Oh,
you're asking
boy.
me the wrong question. Like this, if you're in here because you want a quantifiable number, then let's just not meet again. Like, I'm not the person for you. Like,
Yeah.
this is a lifestyle change. I don't know how long it's going to take. This is something where I want you to wake up and try and be great every day. And when you slip up, I don't even consider it a slip up. I consider it life. And
Yeah.
we come back to it and we get you back to it. Maybe you drank 365 days last year and we have you drinking 160 days. Do you still have a problem? Probably.
Yeah.
But
Doing a lot better.
You're doing
Yeah.
a lot better. And that's how
Congratulations.
But
Yeah.
that's how I approach things. And people don't always, they're like, well, hand me the solution. And I'm like, I don't know if you, one,
Yeah.
can handle the solution, and two, I don't know if you need it. Because I might be able to remove desserts 4 days a week, and you might be able to see your top 2 abs, which is your goal that you asked me. I've never heard that goal in my life. Someone came to me recently, like, I just want to see my top 2 abs. I go, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my
The
life.
rest of them could go to hell.
No,
like,
and
you know,
I'm like, all right, well.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
No, never heard this in
You
my
want
life.
a 2-pack?
Yeah, he was like,
Maybe they're a rap fan.
I'm 40. No, I'm 44 years old, and I'm happy with my body, but I just want to see the top 2 abs. And I said, this is the weirdest
Top
thing ever.
2, yeah.
Top 2. I said, well, what are you doing? He laid it out. I said, all right, well, for 2 weeks, let's cut this in half. He goes, is that it? I go, that's it. And in 2 weeks, I swear to God, he came off. We saw his top 2 abs.
And he was
like,
done?
shook
No,
her
he
hand,
said,
it was
well,
out.
what's next?
Oh, the next
there
2.
any
No,
Is there any others down there? Yeah.
No, but the whole point was if I threw everything at him at first, he wouldn't
Yeah.
have been successful. So
Totally.
I gave him something easy. It was attainable, and the next thing you know, now we can see 2.5 abs. So
It's
we're all
funny,
good.
like Don's familiar with all
See,
the
it's cool.
like some of the weird like movement stuff that I'll do and other people do, and it's like at first it's like people are like, what the hell is this? And it's like, well, I guess that did work, but like I don't use that stuff with people in the beginning. It's like I've got a toolbox, and it's like I'm not always pulling out every tool all the
Right.
time. It's like I go back to the hammer over and over again for
Yeah.
the most part.
'Cause
Like
it works.
So-
yeah,
Yeah, you
like
go to what works.
it's like
Exactly.
I've got this beginner plan like for kind of like white belts, and it's like by the time we get out here, yeah, we're gonna add tools to this situation. But yeah, totally. Like I think there's like almost a plague of people, like from this whole concept of like you see this multitude of exercises being thrown out there, like everything in the kitchen sink, which is usually the surest fire recipe for disaster, going nowhere. And it's like, why are you doing this? Are you just trying to impress other people with what you know? Are you trying to impress the other trainers
Yeah.
that work at your gym? Are you doing this for your own Instagram profile? Or are you legitimately like trying to help this person move towards their goals?
I don't think it's the last one.
It's never the last one.
Yeah, at all.
But I do actually, I will say there's mostly, I think, very well-minded people that work in fitness. They're good people
Yeah,
that are
totally.
well-intentioned, and sometimes they get so sidetracked because they get inundated with the same stuff everybody else sees that they legitimately believe that like doing these wild things and like never doing the same thing twice is really the recipe. And it's like the recipe is doing the same things over and over
1,000
again.
times.
Yeah.
2 things. One is, what is, I never asked you this, Don, and I've meant to, but it's something you said earlier. What's something that when you're scrolling through your feed, something you keep seeing over and over again, maybe it's been years, or maybe you keep seeing it, same with you, Don, like that you wish would die, but it just won't.
I just keep seeing the damn Bosu ball. It just keeps coming back again in like almost new forms. And I'm like, oh, why? Like, how is this thing still like a thing? Like this, like the training on unstable surfaces, like it's automatically going to force you to not be able to use as much muscle mass. You're not going to be able to move as much weight. The amount of like total work that you can do is reduced. That's going to reduce the number of physical adaptations your body can go through. That one just seems to like come back all the time. And then just like relentless amounts of like females trying to train their glutes through like weird kickback things that have like no loading to them.
Right.
And like if there's a way to kick back in an exercise, let's find it. Like seeing
It's
like
all coming from their low back also. Like you just see
100%.
It's like everything's like, it's not even like they're using their glutes. They're just like overextending their low back, and then they're wondering why after they put on a pair of heels, their backs are killing them. I'm like, well,
yeah,
get out of extension.
it's crazy.
a little bit,
It's like they'll take a good exercise like a sled push and like stop on every step and do like a butt kick back. That's
I'm like,
really
just
a
push
low
it
back.
fast.
Push the sled.
Push it fast. Load up a weight.
The
push it.
stair stepper. And every step they got to do a
The
kick
double, or
and
they
I'm like,
start going sideways, and you're like,
just go faster on the stair stepper. The stair stepper is a great exercise.
Throw a vest.
Yeah.
Or like get back to the Bosu ball. Like the people that I see, because I wasn't going to go to the Bosu ball because it's not what bothers me.
I just
most.
saw it today.
All right, I don't see that the most, but I am going to agree with. I mean, most of the people, all the people, not most, all the people that are on the Bosu ball can't do what they're trying to do on the Bosu ball on the floor.
On the damn ground.
So even a body weight Bosu ball squat, which I guess there's such a thing. Like you get them on the floor, they can't even load, and if they're loading, most of them I've seen aren't getting into a good position. So my thing is like, be exceptional at the floor before you ever will go to the Bosu ball. And guess what? You'll never go to the Bosu ball because none of us are exceptional on the floor, and none of us are good enough on the floor to where you need to load up on the Bosu ball. I see so much movement variability on social media, and I see crap that people are. I'm going to throw someone under the bus, and I never do this. This woman, Alexia Clark, who's been jumping into my feet a lot, the queen of workouts. Sorry, Alexia, I'm going to say this, but. She makes shit up before she videos it. Like it's clear, like there's stuff. Go to her feed and check it out.
You're just trying to drive me crazy, aren't you?
No.
Like all my other buddies.
I will actually go to her feed to basically say what percentage of movements make sense. What would I give to a client? That's my question to you. I'm going to ask you this week. I want you to go to her feed, go through her last 50 posts, and tell me what percentage of those exercises would you actually do with a client? And I bet it's less than 5%.
So I got, like, first of all, I don't know who the logic genius was that came up with unstable human on unstable surface equals more stable. What?
Yeah, I don't understand.
What? How could you possibly come to that conclusion? Like, you know, are there with the two remaining brain cells that were functioning now all of a sudden just got like popped or something like that? And like
training's too fluffy. I mean, I think what happens now is that so many coaches and so many influencers are trying to find that next best thing, and they're trying to again put that emotional grabber out there where people are interested. I got a call the other day from a major publication. They were like, one of your celebrities, can you give your favorite exercise? What built their shoulders? And I'm like, I can't even answer this question.
Yeah.
Like,
Men's health, shape. Come on, you can say it.
I don't even know what it was like. It was one of the. It might have been Shape, or it might have been one of the other magazines.
Men's Shape.
But you know what? I just said, I was like, you know what? Just a farmer carry. And they're like, well, can you give us something more exciting? You know what I said? I said no. I said I can't. I'm just tired now. I'm too tired of trying to play that game or trying to give you, let's just angle our hands a little bit differently. We're like, come on, it's bullshit, man.
Because,
become great at the basics.
Because you know what's happened? Too many times people have said okay and done that, and then that's how I feel like we've gotten to where everybody's doing Bosu ball stuff and not doing the things that actually work.
And 99% of the people calling and asking the questions, they're the wrong people asking the questions because they're asking the wrong questions.
Yeah.
So now you're giving information to a 22-year-old intern or someone who's just doing someone else's homework, and they're publishing it because they need the information, and it's just complete bullshit. So to answer your question, I know I'm going on a rant right now. You said the Bosu. I'm saying everything else. All the above. Check it off.
But how did that?
Can I throw somebody under the bus?
Oh, please. Yeah, absolutely.
If we're gonna do this,
Yeah.
the functional patterns dude, Naughty Aguiar, I think is how you say his name. So like, you got to watch some of his stuff. He's impressive physically. Like he can like flop off the ground with like a cable in his hand and like do this wild stuff, and like he will go out of his way to insult all like, you know, sort of like conventional training, and like, you know, he's on this whole thing now, like, show me some research that lifting weights makes you more athletic. I'm like, well, just look at the NFL. Like, how about we just look at Saquon Barkley? Like, are you going to tell me like he got less athletic by lifting weights? Like, dude, like, okay, you line up against like Ndamukong Suh and you show me how you do not lifting
you guys
weights.
play chicken and see how that works out for you.
But like he does the wildest stuff ever, and I'm just like, how would you ever start a client doing this? Like, where do you start and how do you like directionally go from things? Like,
Right.
you know, like with every movement that I could think of that I would have you do in the gym, I have an exact exercise of where you start. The easiest version of this thing that you can it's almost impossible to screw up. And then like if you can do this properly based on these like checklist criteria, now you get to move on to this exercise and now you get to move on to this one. And it's like, it makes sense. But like this dude, it's like, how do I do the 360 like cable punch while jumping off of a bench and like
Yeah, but what
I'm just
bothers
like,
me about
what
these guys,
is
and I
this?
totally agree with them, but what bothers me about these guys, it's not that they can do it because they're able to do impressive stuff and good for them and rah, rah, rah. They'll actually point the finger at people who can't do it. So if you have like a jack guy coming to the gym and he's sitting there and he's like, you can't get into this position, you can't do this, like you're a bad person. And then they sit there and they try and beat you down. And that I've seen specific instructors do. And I'm like, you know what, man, this person's doing the best they can with what they have.
Right.
Like just because they can't put their ankles behind their heads for whatever reason you need to do that for, you know, it's like don't sit here and point the finger at him like he or she's a bad person. So but I have a big problem with people who are throwing out fluffy movements to attract attention when it's especially putting people in not only in a dangerous position, but it's setting them up for failure.
Yeah.
And it's not giving them the best. It's not giving them what they need to become successful or what they need to be successful at.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, if I go see like Cirque du Soleil, I'm not like, you know,
Oh, yeah.
that's crazy specialized stuff, and I'm very in awe of
Yeah.
their ability, but I'm not like, I'm gonna go home and do that move tonight.
That's basically what this guy's
Yeah.
like trying to get
That's what it
people to
sounds
do, and it's like I don't know about you, but I have a hard enough time getting people to like make a bench press look normal.
Yeah.
Like people can't do push-ups.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they can't hold a plank for like 20 seconds.
Right.
Like
Well, can we jump into this now? I wanted. Did you have another question? Because I
No,
wanted to
no,
ask
no,
him
go
something.
ahead.
So you're over at Hike Gym.
Yeah.
Okay, and you and your good buddy Ethan, who I think the world of. You guys have kind of created this concept, and I want to talk about that a little bit because
Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty awesome. It's pretty impressive, and I don't know if 10 years ago you would have thought you would have been doing this. I mean, this is definitely a little bit different. And I don't want to say unconventional. I mean, this is getting people in great shape. It's getting them jacked up. I mean,
Yep.
in a very positive way. But can you go into detail? Can you promote that a
yeah,
little bit?
I'd love to, man, because
Yeah.
this is something, you know, obviously I've talked to you about this for a couple of years
I
now.
think it's a
and,
great
like,
idea, which is why I'm talking about
Yeah, and so if people are not familiar with Kaiser equipment, it's, you know, equipment that's made by Dennis Kaiser, who's in Fresno, California, and he was a kind of a farm boy growing up, and he built like farm equipment, and he used the pneumatic technology from farm equipment and transferred it over to resistance training equipment. So everything that you would use from Kaiser is air pressure based as the form of resistance. And, you know, they have a plethora of different kinds of equipment, going from like squat racks where you can hook up cables to barbells that pull the barbell down with air pressure to, you know, leg presses, overhead press machines. Like you got a direction of a movement that you can load. They have a machine for it, or a free weight kind of attached to air pressure version of it. And, you know, what Ethan and I are doing is we are taking Kaiser equipment, and the other cool thing about Kaiser equipment is if you use it, there's a screen on every piece of equipment, and it tells you the power that you created from every rep that you did. Like it knows the load that you've got on the machine, and it's based on basically like a camshaft that you move a piston through that displaces air. So it knows how far the piston moved through the camshaft. So it knows how far you move the piece of equipment that you're lifting.
That's cool.
And it knows the velocity that it moved at. So if I know the load, I know the range of motion you moved it through, and I know the speed that it moved, I know the amount of power that you created. And at the end of the day, power is the single most important variable we've got in terms of fitness, whether it be health or performance. Health, the way that you identify someone as having a disease is a power score. Like, someone has emphysema if they can't exhale a certain amount of air in 1 second. Someone has heart disease if the amount of blood that they pump out of their heart in a beat is not up to a certain percentage, which is essentially, again, like force times distance over time is what it's all based on. From performance, like the person that wins the marathon is the most powerful marathoner. They all weigh about the same. They all went the same distance. Whoever did it in the least amount of time. Whoever throws a shot put the farthest is the most powerful. Power is the show. And so Kaiser equipment essentially shows you power rep to rep. What we're doing is we're developing software that's capable of not looking at it from a rep to rep basis, but from scoring the entire set, like aggregating all of the reps together to give you a power score for the set, but then not just the set, for the whole workout. Like you could move a chip from piece to piece to piece that identifies you as you, and I know how much power you're creating every rep, every set, every exercise, every workout. And it'll be displayed on a board so that if we're working out as a group, like we could make it competitive if we wanted to.
But you're also training a little bit differently than what your typical bodybuilder and how they're training. Where it's you're still creating time under tension, but just a lot differently.
Yep.
Okay, and you've seen it. You've done these programs where when you're doing a 5-0-2-0 rep, I feel like in time, whether you can develop more muscle or not, I mean, your body gets slow.
Yeah.
You start getting slow, you start moving slow out of nowhere, a car's coming down the street, you go to pick it up to go across the street, and you're like, shit, my body's not moving that fast anymore. It's happened to me. I've seen that. This is kind of going against those rules a little bit, correct?
You can't safely move barbells and dumbbells super fast for multiple reps.
Right.
Go ahead and try sometime. And tell me how your joints feel after a couple weeks.
And an advanced lifter, I can see. Someone like yourself, we hooked you up to some bands, and I said, Pat, 2 reps as fast as you can, you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But how many people out there are built like you and have that type of experience?
They don't even understand how to do it.
Right.
And it's like,
true. I know,
but if you throw a score in front of somebody's face and they see like, oh, that rep got like 212 watts, and it's like, push it harder. And like, 300 watts. People see a score and everything changes.
Yeah, almost like that competition with themselves might kick in, and they're going to want to, they're going to want to pay attention to things to boost that score.
But I love it from a day-to-day approach, though, also, because what starts happening is the individual that used to come through and goes, I'm going to push through it. You can't. You can't. The numbers aren't going to lie. So if you got 5 hours sleep last night and 5 hours sleep the night before, and you're used to getting 7, you're going to come in. You're going to be able to produce less power. I don't care how hard you're going to try. It ain't going to move. So when you didn't have that score, and I'm not. Listen, we don't have that type of technology at Drive. It's not what we're doing, which is why I'm promoting him. I still want to go up and do it with him. But now someone's coming in and they're noticing that their numbers are dropping. There's no push as hard as you want, my friend. It ain't happening. This is coming down to those other variables that you think are not important, and they are. In the past, you weren't able to actually view that because you were coming in here acting like a tough guy, thinking you're Rocky and you can push through it, but that's not the case.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
But do you think psychologically that does something to somebody just to go revisit what they've done?
I hope
to
so.
Kind of,
I hope
in some ways, it's like,
I hope so.
It's like culturally, I do think we've just gotten so soft. Like, oh, you can't say that anymore. Don't fill in the blank, shame this person.
Yeah.
It's like, well, some things are real. It's like we live in a real world, and it doesn't matter what your opinion is. It doesn't matter what your stance is on this thing. It doesn't matter what offends you on some level. Like, you're either fatter or you're leaner. You're either more muscular or less muscular. You're faster or you're slower. You're stronger or you're weaker. And at some point, somebody's got to kind of come along and slap you in the face. And like, this is the truth about you. And like, it's just the even playing field that I like, because it takes away the whole thing of like, well, that guy did lift more weight than me, but he only moved it like 2 inches, Well, if that's true, it'll come out in the score, because the power score takes range of motion into effect. You know what I mean? If taller guys really are getting penalized, well, they're not getting penalized here because they're moving it 18 inches farther than I am on their squat rep or something like that. They'll get rewarded for it. It's ultimately just like, it's a non-subjective, non-opinionated, numerical output that you created on your own. And if you do everything right that you should, if you work hard, if you take care of your lifestyle factors, you're going to see that score go up.
Right.
And
you're going to see body composition change.
You're going to see everything change that you want.
Yeah.
You know, how many times in life do we all get kind of pissed off because it's like, I put in hard work, I think I gave a great effort, and I didn't really see any return on investment. Like, my boss didn't give me a raise. I didn't get the grade on the test. I didn't, fill in the blank. With this particular thing, if you legitimately work harder and you legitimately do what you should have been doing, that we all know we should do, you will see a direct reflection in the score that you put up.
But it's funny because that's not, I mean, to me, it's for someone wanting to be, optimal, because a lot of people out there don't really care.
Right.
There's some people are going to come in, and the people that don't care, and I'm getting a little vicious today, but yeah, you look at a lot of the individuals going into these group classes, and they're quantifying success from a sweat.
Yep.
But then after a period of time, these are the same people coming to me going, well, why aren't I improving? Mm-hmm. I said, because, you know what you're doing right now? You're taking the money that you're earning, and you're just throwing it around to different people to invest. You're not really looking at where it's going. You're not putting any thought process behind it. You're just taking it and throwing it in the air and just saying, oh, just throw it in the bank and let's just earn. And then after a period of time, it's a whole clusterfuck. So, you get what you put out of things. If you're going in to work out for a social hour and just to sweat and to look at beautiful women and, who aren't even paying to be in the classes, and they're turning the heat up to 110 and playing loud music, if that for you is what's allowing you to be successful, then okay, fine. I mean, you may not see much improvement. The reason why I leave the gym every day, I feel successful because when I leave the gym, I'm leaving. That's how I quantify success. For me, this sounds like a blast. Like I'm totally in the I would do something what he's talking about. But when I leave the gym, for me, that's the fight.
Right, because you're in it for performance. You're not using fitness as a distraction.
It's part of my survival.
Right.
Just go. You showing up. I mean, put it this way. If I handed you a barbell tomorrow and said you could do one thing but deadlifts, that's it. That's all you're allowed to do. You're going to leave there probably an hour 15 later. You're going to create something in your head to allow you to be successful, and you're going to leave there feeling like $1 million.
Yeah.
Where if you turn to 99% of the people going into group training classes and you said, we're just going to deadlift today, they're going to go, come on, man, that's boring. An hour?
Yeah.
Really? An hour? But this is what we're battling with in the industry, and this is what sucks about it. The same people who are doing this shit are the same people complaining that they're not moving better, they're moving worse, and their body composition isn't changing. So, what else are you doing it for? To leave and feel good, fine. If that's why you're doing it, fine. But if you're going in the reverse direction and you're actually getting worse and you're getting injured and your body feels like shit and you're actually putting on body fat because you're doing it all wrong, then things need to be rethought.
And most people that are going to group fitness, it's like when you really get down to why they're choosing to go to the specific ones that they are, it's usually because they're like, well, that instructor has great arms. Or they want to look like the person that's teaching the class. But the person that's teaching the class, let's be honest, they're not doing that stuff. That's not how they got to look the way that they look.
It's like the CrossFit Games guys. I gotta be honest, they're savages.
They're not doing CrossFit.
They're not going to CrossFit classes.
Yeah.
They're not. I popped into a CrossFit class the other day. I had a shoot, and I'm watching everyone train. They're not even training. Everyone's just huffing and puffing. They're hitting 1 or 2 pull-ups. They're dropping. They're out of breath. They can't even do the work.
Yep.
They're completely watering everything down, which is why they can't move and they look like shit.
Yep. So, and it's also if I bring you into this class and I bring your favorite instructor in,
he'll die.
Well,
she'll die.
I bet you, you'll probably see their score for that workout. And you'll see your score for that workout. And it's the reason that they look the way that they look and you look the way you look at the board.
Yeah. We should have some fun one day. We should go in. We should do one of the workouts with him, which I've been saying I'm going to do for a while. And we should chase him around. We should bring the camera. We should video it. And we should showcase this because this is a different thought process.
No, I'd love to do that. But you think I'm going to put my score against yours or his? Are you fucking insane?
Well, no, I don't mind kicking my ass. I don't mind chasing him around.
Have you guys the tech should be, we're hoping it's ready, our prototype, version A should be done somewhere around September. We're kind of keeping our...
You let us know.
So I got some time.
Yeah.
You let us know as soon as it's done, and we'll take a field trip.
But Ethan and I make these jokes. This is literally the exact opposite of Planet Fitness. This is not the judgment-free zone. This is the judgment zone. And have you heard this thing that China's doing where they're gonna give people social scores?
I did not hear about that.
No, it's I think it's in the works, but literally you'll have a score associated with you that's based on like your career and like how much money you have and like who you're married to and like who your friends are. And like that will be publicly available that people can look and see what your score is. And it's kind of crazy, but it's like almost like Darwin like brought to like evaluating your social status. But essentially it'll be like certain scores will only like marry those scores and like have kids in there, and it'll stratify in like an insane way. But we're almost doing the same thing from a fitness perspective. And it's like, is it the worst thing in the world? Maybe for some people, and that's fine. I don't want to make a product that everyone will like. I want to make a product for a specific niche of humanity that isn't afraid of that.
I think it's a brilliant idea. By the way, Planet Fitness is the furthest thing from a judgment-free zone that I've ever seen.
Really?
I don't get it. They actually. So you, did I tell you about this woman that I'm working with that was 872 pounds?
No.
So she went from 872 pounds. She just weighed in the other day at 375, I think.
Wow.
376. We did it over the last 4 years. We did it on food stamps. I had a true form treadmill. We had to teach her to walk again. We had to teach her to get on and off the floor. She's a remarkable, one of the strongest, she cardiomyopathy, one of the strongest women I've ever met in my life. I mean, they had to literally weigh her on a meat scale. And she was laying down, she looked over and she saw 872. And the Today Show came and did a piece on her. She went in, I told her to go join the local gym, so she went into Planet Fitness and they wouldn't take her because she was over a specific weight limit.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
That's a thing that they have?
I have no idea. So I turned around, I called my buddy Rick Mayo at Anytime Fitness, and Rick turned around and within 12 hours calls back, and the Anytime Fitness Romeoville got their best trainer, and they're paying per my instructions for a coach 4 to 5 days a week to work with her, and she's going in now, she's doing workouts, and she's moving and she's doing what she can, but she's every week it's like 1 pound down, 1 pound down, 1 pound down. It's a beautiful thing, but
that's cool.
Judgment-free zone? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's unreal. I mean, they probably just would have completely screwed her up anyways, giving her
they don't
pizza
know what
on
they're doing.
Tuesday or whatever the hell it is that they do.
I just think it's kind of a,
That's horrible.
It's
Like,
horrible.
yeah.
I mean, you know, and I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that, but why not?
We're completely screwed from this episode. Like, I'm gonna have naughty coming out. Whatever.
Don't
like,
call me up.
you can bend around. I'll run you through a wall, but whatever, bro. Like,
Let's have enemies after this episode, but it's all
But
good.
but this product isn't, as you said, it's not for everyone, but it's for people who are serious and people who want to improve and people who want to take this, you know, as more than just, as I said before, fitness for distraction. They're not just going to throw money at just to jump around and take a million different classes just to say they did. It's people that want to get better at something, whatever their goal may be.
It's competitive and it's fun.
Yeah.
and it'll have direction to it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I just can't imagine doing something where I'm like, where is this going?
Right.
You know, like, you don't have any idea where this is going, do you? Like, this is the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
Like,
Pat created a program years ago called Mass,
yep,
which is awesome.
yep.
That was a great program, but you keep doing revisions of it. You keep almost...
Yeah, there's Mass and Mass 2.
Right.
In some ways, this concept is based still. It always, you know, there's always a line that continues to go forward, and like this Kaiser concept is still largely based on Mass.
But is Mass and Mass 2 available to the public? Can you
Absolutely,
can you tell
yeah.
everyone where they can kind of find that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, you know, I've got dr.patdavidson.com as my website that can basically lead you to everything. It needs to be updated. You know, I need to get dates into seminars and things like that. But it's got all the previous things that I've done. It's got the Mass book available, Mass 2. Muscle and Fitness actually ran a story on Mass 2 at some point, like pretty good feature one on that. And you know, it's got the video for Rethinking the Big Patterns 1. Just if you're going to do that one, it gets pretty intense in terms of science and movement and that kind of stuff. So just know what you're getting into. Mass and Mass 2 are really good, solid training books that if you are in a commercial gym that's super busy, might be really hard to do. I don't want to give anybody a false idea about what it is. You know, you need to have the ability to have a lot of stations with those. But even regardless, Mass 2 is probably worth reading just for the training-based knowledge that you would gain from it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And what about your Instagram handle?
Instagram is Dr. Pat Davidson. I think there's a period after the DR. But yeah, if you're gonna follow me, that's the place to go is Instagram for that.
And I know your book is completely swamped, and you're one of the most in demand coaches in New York City. But you train at a hype gym.
I do, which is in Union Square. Yeah.
Right, which is I still haven't seen it yet, and I am gonna come up.
Yeah, we'll get you over there, man.
definitely.
You
We're gonna do
probably
something.
won't be able to get ready after
No, I
that,
love it.
like
You know
'cause
how I am.
I know how you like to train, and
I
like
love it.
it's
I love it.
it's
I
gonna
love
be
it.
insane.
Well, listen, guys, this is fun, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know. I mean, Jesus,
Yeah.
what do we go? Over an hour and a half, so that's when you know it's good. When you lose track of time. Pat's a good friend. I mean, this is exciting to have people on of this caliber, and I know Pat's been in the industry a long time. You're going to be hearing about him a lot more. We gave you all the information. If you got any questions for Zach and I mean, you can message us at reps
at muscleandfitness.com.
reps at muscleandfitness.com.
You can Don's at Don Saladino.
And you're a Z-Raz.
Yes. And
you're doing good with your Instagram lately.
I'm trying. I'm taking your advice. You told me to post more because I'm just it just takes forever for me to write something.
He's got to focus on other things. I'll do a lot of the posting.
But yeah, listen. I hope we get to have you again. This was
I'd
great.
love to,
I have
man.
a million
Super-
more questions.
Super easy for me to get here, you know.
Great.
And I'm telling you, you should do a segment with him. He'd be perfect for like dissecting the main lifts and just having him go because he's.
I'd love to.
I love his brain. I love how he thinks, and like I said, he's someone I've been listening to for a long time.
I'd love
So
to,
it's
and I love the fact too, like that we were saying, just kind of knocking people back a little bit, and making them rethink what they think they already know because they probably don't.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about getting people that are much smarter than we are on this.
And the people that are watching this, they're watching this for one reason because they want to learn and they want to improve.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
want to see, your beautiful hair and your beautiful.
Did
looks good
you
today.
notice I actually
Yeah,
cut
it's
it
a
down
nice
about
groove.
4 inches?
I like
Yeah.
it, I like it.
My wife made me. Yeah.
Awesome.
She made a comment.
Thanks, guys. A lot of fun.
See ya.